Welcome to our workshop today. We're so excited to have you here. It's called Find Out in 5. I'll explain what that's all about in a second, but just to start with some introductions, my name is Jay Wong. I'm an instructor at GCM, which stands for Graphic Communications Management at Ryerson University. A little bit about myself. I was first interested in applying to GCM as a high school student because I really enjoyed my content classes. I enjoyed dabbling in Creative Suite. I was editor of my yearbook. That seems to be the gateway for a lot of people who are interested in GCM. And I felt like I really liked design, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to commit to a full undergraduate degree in design. I thought maybe I want to keep some more options open. I was kind of interested in sort of this whole business communication aspect that GCM has to offer. So I ended up applying to GCM, loved it so much. In some ways, I never left. So I've been teaching at GCM for 7 years now. A course that I've gotten very lucky to teach a few times is our first year kind of introduction to graphic design course. So even if you've never even opened Creative Suite, don't be afraid. We sort of teach it from the ground up. But I've been lucky to teach that course for the past few years, and that is something that you would take in your first semester. So it's very exciting. It's a very fun class. We'll show you some examples of that. And I also run GCM's social media. So if you ever send us a DM on Instagram or on Twitter, chances are you're talking to me. So don't be shy, message anytime. And I'll hand it over to Nat to introduce herself.
Oh, thanks, Jay. So I'm Nat. I am a faculty member at GCM as well, so same school, and I'm also a grad of the program, a little bit further along, further long time ago than Jay, but still a grad. And I sort of came about the program similarly in that I was really interested. So I had a creative background, but I was really interested in business. But I was afraid that if I just studied management on its own, then when I graduated, I wouldn't have anything to manage. So I sort of wanted to specialize in something so that I understood the industry and knew what I was going into. And then after I graduated, I did essentially like an MBA degree. And I also worked on yearbooks as well, except for professionally. So I was like the person, if any of you work on yearbook, we often get yearbook students. I was the person who would go into your high school and teach you how your yearbook's made. So that was sort of like my first introduction into teaching, and I really fell in love with it and started teaching at GCM about 12 years ago, actually with the same course that Jay is talking to you guys about now, and then now branching out, doing some other senior level courses in business at GCM that sort of link back to us. And it's been really amazing to be a part of the program, both as a student and as a faculty member. We have a really neat community, which you'll find out about shortly. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome. So here's our little agenda for this next fun little hour that we'll have together. So where we came up with this Find Out in 5 is we love a good list. And so everything will be chunked in sections of 5. And so we really have 5 agenda items today. So we're going to start with 5 fun facts about GCM. I would definitely encourage you to visit our website for more information. So that's ryerson.ca/GCM. And then right at the top, you'll see a tab for future students. We have a lot of fun videos about different events that we've held, a lot of photos of student work and things like that. So if you want to really sort of in-depth look at what GCM is all about, that's my first sort of recommendation. But we sort of picked out 5 really exciting things to share with you today. So this is really meant to be a fun interactive workshop. I totally get feeling shy and not wanting to be on camera, so don't worry about that. But we would really love if you could get involved in the chat as we sort of present different things to you today. And so we're going to start with 5 fun facts about creativity. We're going to teach you 5 fun facts about typography, which is all about working with fonts and type. And then 5 fun facts about color. And then you can see the theme here where the Find Out in 5 came from. And then lastly, we'll just open it up to your questions, and you are allowed to ask more than 5 questions if you want, okay? So a couple of things before we get going here. In case you haven't seen prior to this, we run a very active Instagram account. It's RUGCM. We post all sorts of student work on there. And then if you check out our stories as well, we do sort of advertise any sort of recruitment events. So for anyone who is interested in applying to GCM, we definitely advertise it through there. So that's a good way to stay in the know about what we have going on. And the last thing I want to say just before we get going here, please don't hesitate to ask questions throughout this workshop today. So feel free to type them in the chat. We have a couple handy friends here who will help us out and sort of answer your questions as we go if Nat and I aren't able to see them. But definitely we're happy to answer some of them in the Q&A at the end as well. All right.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the program. We sort of pulled our favorite things that we love about GCM. So this isn't necessarily everything that you need to know. It's not an exhaustive list. It's just a list of 5 things we happen to like. And so one of the first things I wanted to briefly tell you about is that GCM is fairly unique. We're the only program in Canada that combines design, production, and business together in a single school. So there's lots of business schools and there's lots of design schools, but there's not a whole lot of schools in Canada who do both those things really well together. And so that's fairly unique to us, particularly in Canada. The other thing that we really love about our program is that we call ourselves the GCM family, and we have a structure that sort of promotes getting to know each other quite well. So most of your classes that happen within our program are fairly hands-on. And in order to be able to do that, what happens is you have large lectures for the theoretical components of your classes, but then small labs of about 30 people that you get to know throughout the semester that you are together with them. And then, you know, throughout the years, you have a different 30 and a different 30. So everybody gets to know each other pretty well. And locally to Canada, printing is a fairly tight-knit industry. It's not small, but it's fairly tight-knit. So you end up working with each other in industry and so on. So it sort of like continues even outside the program, which is lovely. We have absolutely incredible technology in our school. So we're very lucky that we work closely with our industry partners, and a lot of our tech is donated. So we're working on some of the things that we have in our labs aren't even owned by a lot of industry people because they haven't quite yet updated them to that standard. So we're very lucky in that way. We have, always bright, shiny new Macs, always working on the latest version of everything that could possibly work. And so we're very lucky to be training you guys for the technology and the tools that you would actually be using in industry, so that when you graduate, not only are you sort of with it and with what industry is doing, you're almost ahead in some ways. So that's really neat. We really love options at GCM. And so part of that is being able to choose from a really broad variety of electives and core electives, as well as specializing in a specific concentration at GCM. So you could come to GCM and you could dabble in all sorts of courses and figure out what you want to do, or you can concentrate in a specific area. And some of those are packaging, publishing, leadership, and digital output. So those are examples of the concentrations that we have in our school. And then the last thing that Jay and I picked to share with you today is that with a GCM degree, truly and honestly, you can almost end up anywhere, because the skills that we teach you within the program are the types of skills that are necessary in almost every company and every place in the world. So sometimes I know it's really hard to sort of figure out what you're going to be when you grow up. I feel like I'm still sort of doing that as we speak, but sometimes we're really passionate about a specific industry or a specific company. So like, let's say that there's, I don't know, who should I pick that won't be contentious? I was going to say McDonald's, but that's probably a bad one. What's a cool company? Anyway, you think of that company and they probably need the types of skills that our grads have, which is really amazing. So a lot of our graduates, they don't actually go into production type companies. Instead, they work with brand owners. And a brand owner example would be someone like Nestle or Canadian Tire, or those branded companies that as consumers. They need our students as well, because they need to be able to communicate and talk with people who do production and who do design, and sort of bring it all together. So it's a really well-rounded degree that, depending on where you want to go, you can kind of take anywhere, which I know could sound a little overwhelming, but is actually full of opportunity, which is really neat. So those are our 5 things.
Awesome. So sprinkled throughout, we just wanted to share some photos of life at GCM, a lot of product or projects that our students have worked on. So just to speak to what Nat shared about us being a family, here's some fun photos of some first years in our program working together on a project. So we're a very hands-on program. And what's really sort of cool about this project that they're showing, it's in a first year production course. And if you're a creative leaning person, it's so satisfying to be the one to, and what I'm about to describe is what they did for this project. They designed the poster, they mixed the ink for the poster. So that's what you see Lucy holding right here, the ink that they tested and mixed themselves. They ran this poster on a press themselves. So it's so satisfying if you're a creative leaning person to be able to like sort of come up with an idea in your head and sort of see it all the way through to the very end. So as Nat said, really nice small class sizes. And I also will say, even though there's some uncertainty about what the fall semester might look like, I did teach this first year graphic design course in the fall this past semester. So whether we're online or whether we're in person, whatever it is, I know that the first years always find a way to sort of get to know each other. The chat in every lecture was always going off. I felt like a Twitch streamer. That's why I got a microphone to give you the full ASMR experience. But the students had a lot of fun with it, and I got to know them very well, and it was a lot of fun for sure. And I want to speak a little bit to what Nat mentioned about us being high tech. There's so much cool technology that's very relevant to what we do at GCM. FCAD, which is sort of the bigger faculty that we're a happy member of, earlier this summer, they installed this really cool wide format printer that'll actually let you print on sort of thick, rigid materials. So things like you could print on wood, you can print on acrylic and glass and mirrors and all these things. It's so cool. So that got installed in the winter, and it's something that many GCM instructors are already looking at integrating into our courses in the winter, which is very cool. The example that you see here, we're getting noticed by all sorts of companies as the years go on. So we've have a really cool growing partnership with Snapchat going. So they've held 2 sessions with us in November and October. So now that we're sort of all online, it's really cool that they're in Los Angeles and they can do this with us. But they sort of taught our students how to use their lens studio. So making filters that warp your face or affect the area around you, which is really awesome. One of our graduating students, so she's in 4th year, her name's Bailey. She got an internship at Snapchat Canada just because of her very thorough understanding of process and mixing technology with print. So taking like a Metro card and overlaying augmented reality so it sort of pops up on your phone and does something more fun and different. So she did an internship there, and they offered her a full-time job afterwards. So there's a lot of really cool, reputable companies who are noticing what we're doing as well.
How many times is Nat going to be told to unmute herself in this session? We're going to start off with our like official sort of teachy part of the workshop. So this would be fairly close to what it would be like to take a class with Jay and I think. And hopefully you get that sort of sense and that experience of what the classroom would feel like, in particular online this term anyway. And so I want to talk to you guys about 5 things that you could sort of expect to know about creativity, because creativity is really important in our program, and it drives a lot of the decision making that you do when you create your own projects. So the first sort of fact and tidbit that I wanted to share with you guys is that creativity sort of exists best in a place of openness and positive attitude. So there needs to be like a sense of trust for yourself and for your colleagues when you want to do something creative. So we're going to try to play around with this just for a hot second. So I'm going to like peak your stress level just a little bit, and we'll see if we can get some class participation. I thought we would play this fun game, and I'm going to force Jay to play it with me first so that you guys don't feel like you're on the spot. And then if I can get volunteers, then I will be thrilled. If we are scared, then we won't do it. Okay, so the idea of the game is it's a proverb building game. Okay, so if you've I should have probably thought of a better example of a proverb, but a proverb is like, he who sleeps at night wakes up rested. Okay, so those types of sayings. And so we're going to try to build one by going back and forth. And so I'm going to add a word and Jay's going to add a word, and we'll go back and forth. Your job is when you feel, and so you can turn on your microphones if you're feeling brave. When you feel like our proverb is finished, you're going to start yelling, yes, 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 and then the proverb will be done. It'll come to like a natural conclusion. So we're going to demonstrate once, and then we're going to see if maybe 2 other people in the class could give it a try. Okay, so Jay, you want to start us off?
All right. She
Who
watches,
things
enjoys,
cold
showers,
in
the.
bathtub.
I think
Yes,
that's a
yes,
natural.
yes, yes, yes,
yes.
yes, yes.
There we go.
Get it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't have to make sense. It's probably not going to because you're on the spot. But does anybody want to try and build a proverb with us in the spirit of creativity and openness? What do you guys think? I can't see everybody on my screen, so you can do, can you see everybody, Jay, on your screen? I'm working on a tiny, tiny laptop.
Rasika is ready in chat.
Perfect. Rasika, who's going to join Rasika? Rasika, are you okay to unmute your mic so that we can hear you? Anybody else want to join? If not, Rasika and I will try together. Be brave, you can do it. It doesn't, clearly we're showering in bathtubs here, so.
Sure.
Yay, Amanda, okay.
Woo.
So Rasika and Amanda, you're just gonna go back and forth, and when we feel like you're finished your proverb, we'll yell yes, 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 okay? Amanda, you're higher on my screen, so I'm gonna get you to start. Oh, Beth is gonna join too. Okay, 3 of you, okay? So order is gonna be Amanda, Rasika, then Beth, okay? That's the order of operations. Okay, so all mics on. Here we go. Amanda, start us off.
When
They
Beth, you there? You gotta unmute.
it's my mom's side.
Go
Out.
to
I- oh.
So Rasika next. When they go
Outside.
outside. Beth, I think it's you now, right?
to
Play.
outside
You've got when they go outside to play. Rasika, your turn.
Ball.
the
Birds.
Picked.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Okay. So when they go outside to play ball, the birds peck. I love it. Okay.
I love it.
So you guys can you guys can see these sort of like weird and awesome exercises. They start to sort of open up your brain and open up your mind to the possibilities of what, you know, word could come next, and it's sort of always unpredictable. And so that's sort of what we try to foster when we're thinking about creativity, and we do lots of those types of things in our classes. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, and by the way, I should say, I didn't want to clog up these slides with a lot of, you know, like references and research, but these are all sort of researched facts, okay? The other thing that people say about creativity, or researchers say, is that creative insights often happen when you're relaxed and resting. And that's important because I think we work in a program that's fairly creative. And so you like sit down to do your homework and you're like under the stress of, oh my God, I got to get this done. And that's not really when the magic happens. And so I thought that I would bring this up because one of the cool things that I think you could do now in between, you know, being in high school and finally choosing where you're going to end up in university is thinking about what those moments of relaxation and rest look like for you. So if you find yourself, for example, that you are, you know, toiling the hours away, you're like not noticing the clock while you're editing a photo in Photoshop, and that's so enjoyable for you, you're spending your time doing that, those are the types of things that you want to pursue that are going to like increase your creativity over time, right? So if you love writing and time falls away, you're sort of like in the zone when you're writing, those are the types of things you want to spend your time doing. And we try to sort of foster that sort of same relationship when you're in classes with us as well. So that's another cool thing. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that there's lots of different types of creative people, and that knowing these different types of creative people actually increases your own creativity. So we're going to show you a cute little quiz. We're not going to do it now because it takes a little bit of time. But if you want to check out this website, and I'll just type it here so you can. Isn't the sound of somebody typing in chat wild? I feel like I'm on a typewriter. Okay, so this is the site. And what you can do is, thank you, Jay. So you can take the test, okay? So this is just like those good old magazine style test little quizzes that tell you about yourself. And this is produced by Adobe. Adobe, of course, is the largest software company for creative, for the creative field. And then you answer the questions. There's lots of different questions, maybe I think there's 15, 17, something like that. And when you're done, it tells you your creative type. Now, I don't want to actually, we talked about whether or not I tell you what all the types are, but I almost don't want to because I'm scared it's going to skew your results, okay? So I don't want to tell you the different types, but I do want you to check out the quiz, and maybe if we have time at the end, we could all do the quiz together and figure out what your type is. But they're really neat, and they give you a description and they tell you your creative strengths, maybe your untapped potential. So like what you could achieve if you really like hone in on that particular creative type. So that's something to consider. And of course, the more unique people are around you, the more likely it is that you are to have creative outcomes, which is lots of fun. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you about creativity is that creativity is not like secretly given talent to all. It takes a lot of discipline and method to be creative. And so we can't teach talent. We can teach method and discipline that will lead you to practice, that will help you build that talent, right? Build on that talent. And so I just wanted to read you a really quick quote by one of my favorite authors. Her name's Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. That's probably her most famous book, but she also has some amazing stuff on creativity, including a TED Talk that you can check out. And so I'll read to you what she says about creativity, and she's a highly creative person. So she says, genetic randomness has already determined how much talent I've been allotted, and destiny's randomness would account for my share of luck. The only piece I have any control over is my discipline. Recognizing that, it seems like the best plan is to work my ass off. That was the only card I had to play, so I played it hard. Okay, so this sort of concept and idea that, you know, these things that we think about creativity and being a creative person, they have limits in their scope, right? Like there's only so much talent, there's only so much luck, but there's endless discipline, and there's endless willingness to try and explore and practice. And this is something that we really, really try to build into you before you leave the program, that no one is amazing on day one, but you stand a chance to be pretty amazing when you stick with something, right? Okay, so I think Jay's going to show you some of the examples of what happens when you do practice.
Awesome.
And then,
Excellent.
yeah, let's do that.
Cool. So, sort of our point five on all three of these sections is just to tell you a little bit about some of the courses that you can take at GCM and where you'll really sort of hone in on these skills that Nat has mentioned and get to explore. So the first thing I wanted to share with you is the course I mentioned to you, that first year graphic design course. The course code is GCM 130. And so starting last semester, now that we're in an online space, we started an Instagram account just to share the work of the students that are produced by students in that course, because I think it's so worth seeing for everyone. So this is just one example of the kind of projects that you'll see on there. So in first year, we always have this really nice big branding project. And so there's always a theme, whether it's travel, whether it's branding a music festival, branding a new business opening up. And so in addition to the creative side of having a good aesthetic and understanding color and things like that, we also really try to build a very solid technical understanding so that you're a huge asset no matter where you end up working, right? So you have a good understanding of what looks good, but also what is going to work when I actually try to print this out or put it on a website. So in this particular example, this is branding for a travel agency. So this student, Hannah, she developed her logo. She designed a poster that would, or sorry, a magazine ad that would be in something like National Geographic. She designed two sides of a luggage tag. So these are sort of printed items, but then she also took her skills and developed sort of an Instagram story that you would see on social media, and then a Snapchat filter as well. So just once again, in case you're curious to take a browse, the account is GCM 130, and we've had a lot of really neat submissions last semester. So different people making different social media slides. So what really works well when you're picking colors. Students designed different infographics. So how to get viral on TikTok, for example. And then we design comic book covers and book covers. So I definitely recommend giving a follow so you can see what students come up with this semester, but also taking a scroll through. And I will make a point in saying that a lot of these students had never touched Creative Suite before this course. So it just goes to show you how far you can come in just 12 weeks. So don't look at these and feel intimidated that everyone is going to really surpass what you're able to do. It just takes a little bit of practice, but we can get your skills in a long way very quickly, I like to think. Okay. All right, and so we have a couple other projects that I'm gonna ask Nat to talk a little bit about, sort of in this vein about creativity that we're on.
Yeah, and so one of the things that happens in GCM is, in addition to pretty cool courses, we also have a whole bunch of student groups on campus. And so those student groups are usually dedicated to like exploring a specific topic. And so the one that I run is called Ride Pack. And basically students are really interested in packaging. And so this is an example of things that students interested in packaging might accomplish in our program. And this is an example. So this is Lauren and Bailey, and they created this mock-up for Nestle and Kit Kat through an organization called PAC. So they're like an industry association that we're connected with, and they submitted it for competition. There was 8 other schools that competed. And so there was 8 other Kit Kat packages to consider. They're sort of like sustainable slant on this. So they were thinking about how they can change the Kit Kat family size pack from a pouch, which is not very sustainable. It goes in the garbage. We can't really recycle it, to something a little bit better. So this is a box, right? So paper we know is highly sustainable. And they actually won first place of all the schools that competed with us, which is York Sheridan was there, Durham was there, and I wish I remembered who else, but I don't. And so they did really well. They had to do a presentation for industry. Later, I found out that the people at Nestle were watching streaming the presentation live in their lunchrooms so that they could watch, which is pretty incredible. And they won a little bit of money as well, which is a really great way to spend your time in your undergrad, you know, instead of doing whatever job that you may have part-time, to make that money doing these types of competitions. And then Jay's got another example of a packaging competition that we won this year, and this is an even bigger one. And this is Dory and Laura, and they put together, so like everything you see on the screen here is created by the students themselves. And then the picture that you see on the left is the final package. They actually output that package. So it exists in physical form. We have it. And of course, you know, this year with COVID, things are a little bit different. We did some like funny roundabout things where I would print things and deliver them to Dory, and then Dory would put them together and check if it works and then ask me to print it again, and so on. So there's a bit of a process. But the concept here is they've created this like box that goes to schools to educate them about the sustainable nature of trees. And that little light green box you see in the middle, that's actually a box that holds a sapling. So like a little tree that you could put right into the ground, and the box disintegrates and the tree grows and the cycle goes round and round. And this competition is actually an international competition. It's the first time a Canadian school has won this year, which is really, really exciting. And we were really thrilled to be able to present this at an international conference. We would have gone to Vegas had it not been for Corona. So these guys would have had an all expenses paid trip to Vegas to present their work. Next year, fingers crossed, will be, I think, in Savannah, Georgia. So it'd be really great if we could go. But again, a really great opportunity to like show off your skills. And these are senior students. So some of this is, you know, a little bit more difficult to do. Comes with time, but there's classes that support you being able to do this. So they learned how to do this in their classes, and they put together those skills to be able to compete in this particular competition.
Yeah, and just to expand a bit on like what you would get out of GCM, and not to knock on a graphic design program, like that's the right fit for a lot of people and you should do your research. But students like this, like just throughout the curriculum, they have an understanding of like structural integrity, or like what substrate or material makes sense to pick to print something like this. And we have the equipment, as Nat sort of touched upon, to sort of make these dreams in your head sort of turn into outputs, which I think is really cool.
And I will just, because you mentioned it, Jay, I will add, one of the key reasons that the ladies won this competition is that entire box actually is only printed on one side. So they created a structural design that folds in on itself and creates all that color, which sustainability wise is really great for the environment if you're only running something on one side of the paper. So that's like a magic key that they had to that win that you wouldn't get in a program that is strictly creative, which is, you know, some of the other schools that were there.
Awesome. And then I have just a couple other fun examples, sort of just to show off the work of our creative students. So on the left here, you have a student named Allie. So she's a second year GCM student right now. And something that has been really fun that I've gotten to teach for the past couple of years as well, as we have a really fun piece of equipment at GCM called the Roll-In, and that's a wide format printer. And basically what we do is we have this project where students design their own stickers and print them out, just to sort of understand some of the technology around that. And Allie really took a liking to what she did in that course, and she ended up just buying a Cricut, maybe through Amazon or something like that. And now she has a whole Etsy business where she designs stickers, fulfills orders, and ships them around the world. So she's done really cool for herself if you want to check that out. And then we have some examples of a student who she sent me an email 2 weeks ago, and she said, I was really happy to learn about graphic design in this course, but not just sort of what looks good, but sort of how can I make a file that's properly set up to print well, and the colors are what I expect them to be, and so on. So her dad has a construction business, and just as a Christmas gift, she designed some t-shirts for him, which is really cool. And similarly, another first year student reached out to me. She said, I was looking at this Tetley, I was bored, and I was thinking, I don't really like this branding. I'm gonna just, for fun, just to kill some time in quarantine here, try out a new rebrand for this. And so this is what she came up with, which is awesome. And then to the same tune here, just a solid understanding of if the colors aren't coming out how you expect them to, like how can we adjust them in Creative Suite and so on. All right. Mute, mute.
Never, it'll never go away. Okay, so that's a little bit about creativity. Next, we're gonna talk about typography, which is one of my favorite topics. So what is typography really? Typography is essentially the art of arranging letters. And this is my sort of spin on it. What I'd like to say is that so that people like really feel the message, not just see, not just understand, but really have a connection with the message that you're putting out there. So when you're being creative with type, it's a unique sort of thing because if you break the type, you break the design. And perhaps you guys have had these experiences where you're looking at something and the text is all over the place. Maybe they're using the wrong fonts or too many fonts, and you're like, oh, this is like confusing, right? So you could break the chain of communication if you don't set your type well. And so that's something really important to consider. And we have a ton of really great experiences with typography and GCM that you see under point 5, and I'm getting ahead of myself. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is type has a personality, and Jay's going to show you a little picture from a book called Type Matters. And so here you see, just by changing the typeface of this particular company name, right? So this is like a little company name, like a plaque. You could see how you could really change the meaning and confuse people, right? So on your bottom left, you see Rocco the Clown in this really like uppercase prolific corporate plate sort of typeface. It doesn't go, right? Like we expect Rocco to be bubbly and fun and sort of cheerful. And so choosing the appropriate typeface for the use that you would like to have it for is really important. And we talk a lot about that for sure. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is many of the sayings that you know that maybe you don't think are in any way connected to typography actually are. So print has been around for a really long time, and typography as well. And so some sayings that you may have heard people say, maybe your parents say to you, things like mind your P's and Q's, or cut to the chase, or the idea of uppercase letters and lowercase letters. Those are all sayings and words that come from the world of typography. So what you see here is a chase of lead letters. Okay, so this would have been letterpress printing some time ago. And what you see is that like the square around it is the chase. So cut to the chase is fit what you have to say into that space. So if you're too long-winded, paper was expensive, just get rid of it, cut to the chase. Okay, P's and Q's, those little metal letters, P and Q is opposite of itself. And so when you're picking those letters out and putting them into that chase, make sure that you've got the right P and the right Q, right? Because they're easy to mix up. So these types of sayings rooted in typography that maybe you've used that you didn't even know it was rooted in typography. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to talk about relative to type is if you are the type of person who loves detail, like you could just pour over your design for hours and move the line a little to the left, a little to the right, this sort of thing. That is like the typographer in you. It's very difficult to design a beautiful typeface. And so this is an example of just a few of the terms that you have within typography that you have to consider when you're creating your own typeface and you want to make it look unique. And we'll show you some examples of student typefaces in just a little bit, but you can get the sense that like you're really zoning in on each area, right? So like even things like the ear of the G in this particular case is a straight line across, but perhaps you want something a little bit more wispy and you would like sit there and pour over just the ear on the G because that would have an impact on the way that your type feels. So we're gonna play a little game. And you can play along in your own browser. We're not going to make you show anything or speak. Thank you for doing that though earlier. And maybe Jay, you can pull it up on screen. so that we can see. Okay, and so Jay's going to be in the hot seat and I'll talk it through. So typographers, for example, anytime you set titles, you need to make sure that those titles look nice and even and the spaces between them are nice and even. And that concept of spaces between letters, individual letters, is called kerning. So what Jay's trying to do is move the A and the V such that they're in the perfect position relative to the W and E, and it tells you your error rate. Look at you, 100%. You see that? A plus, A plus. And see, now you have to move the Y over a little bit and the P over a little bit so it's balanced. Now, you wouldn't do this in a big body of text, right? Like nobody sits there and does this to a paragraph. That's a different thing called tracking, but kerning you would do on titles. And so you can always tell when a less experienced designer is working on a set of type if the title isn't kerned. That's one of the like secret tells.
So what's really cool about this website at the same time is you like get exposed to different fonts. So they like tell you the name of the typeface along the bottom. You can like click it and like install it into your Adobe. It also tells you who invented it, which is pretty cool. So if anyone's not feeling too shy, let us know what your score was. To be completely honest with you, I normally get a 60 when I do this. So I was pretty surprised that I got 100.
Did you practice? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Sometimes it's hard to tell where to put them.
I had it set up before we started. All right.
Smart. Okay. So hopefully you'd have some fun checking that out. And then the last thing I'll say about typography that I mentioned briefly already is if it's something that really interests you, there's a couple courses within the GCM program that focus specifically on type. So we have like not a beginners, but it is a beginners because you've not done it before. So beginners course in typography, as well as an advanced course in typography. So you can sort of like, if you fall in love with it in our required typography course, which everybody takes, then you can continue with it into the advanced course. And then we also have these unique courses where you look at magazines and books and how they're produced, made, published, designed. And in books and magazines, so any sort of publication that you read for a long time, typography is very important because imagine, reading an entire book, yellow background, light gray text, wrong typeface, your eyes would get tired, you'd get mad. So understanding these types of decisions and what type can do to the experience of communicating with someone on paper is really important. And we talk a lot about that in those courses. Okay, so Jay's going to show you some examples, some beautiful examples.
Awesome. So this is from our second year typography course. So this is called Hometown Icons. And so what students were challenged to do with this project is take their hometown and then take the name of it and then sort of work it into some sort of graphic. So we have a few cool examples here. Toronto turned into a blue jay. Madagascar turned into a lemur. So really cool type along the tail here. Scarborough and the Weekend, Istanbul and the mosque, and then our trash panda, a little Toronto raccoon over here as well. So we have a lot of fun examples. So that's a required second year course if you decide to join us here at GCM. And then Nat spoke a little bit about our advanced typography course. And so their big takeaway project in that class is actually designing their own typeface. And after you've done all this work, it's actually not very hard to sort of turn it into an actual font that you could put into like Microsoft Word and start typing away with it, which is really cool. So this was done by a student named Will. He's in third year now. So he planned sort of every last detail by himself, right? To how the curves turn and all those different pieces of terminology that you saw earlier. We actually did a feature on 5 different projects from that class just last week. So if you take a look at RU GCM, you can take a look at somewhat what some of the other students did, which is pretty cool. All right, so our final sort of piece of 5 that we're giving you today is 5 little facts about color. So the first one that I have for you here is just color gives us the feels. Okay, and so what do we mean by this? There's so much psychology that's involved in selecting colors. that you might not even think about. It might be in your subconscious. And so something that we talk about in this first year course is really choosing colors for design and sort of why we would choose specific colors. And so I found this graphic here, which I thought was pretty cool. And it's categorized sort of general ways that we describe these colors in terms of how they make us feel or what sort of the psychological meaning might be. So you have yellow, which is a color of optimism. You have orange, which is thought to be a friendly color. So for those of you who are joining us from Canada, you may have heard of Tangerine Bank. And so tangerine is really, or sorry, orange is thought to be this very youthful color that excites sort of a younger demographic. And that's really sort of the demographic that tangerine is going for, right? And then trust is another interesting one to talk about, which is associated with the color blue. So if you think about social media logos, think about Facebook is blue, Twitter is blue, Tumblr was blue, no one's using it anymore. TikTok has some blue in it. So think about sort of the implications around being on the internet and wanting your stuff to be secure, right? And sort of how that ties into trust. So as much as it might seem like a willy-nilly decision and just I'm picking what looks nice, there's all this psychological stuff that goes on with color, which is really interesting to talk about. All right, colors help us make sense of the world. So I have a little wayfinding example for you here. So this is an example of the Boston Children's Hospital. And so what they have here is they've just organized their wings by different colors. And so I'm trying to squint here a little bit to see. So for example, if you want to get to the lobby, just follow the red sign, for example, right? And I like this a lot because there's all sorts of implications around accessibility as well. So if you think about what if someone has some sort of color impairment and all the colors are kind of muted or look the same, it's said in the accessibility that you should give people sort of two things to pay attention to. So that's why we also have symbols in addition to colors. So there's some examples of that. To go back to something, sorry, the color gives us the feels. I did a little bit of research that I wanted to share with you that I thought was really sort of neat to think about. It's said that when we're interacting with a product, our sort of judgment about the product and how we feel about it is usually made within 90 seconds, so a minute and a half. And 62 to 90% of how we feel about something is based on color alone, right? So that it's interesting to sort of think about walking through a grocery store and picking up different pastas and deciding sort of why I'm going to buy this one and how much it has to do with color. Once you get to the age where you start picking wines and craft beers and stuff, for me, it's just so much of a game of where's the prettiest bottle? And Nat has done a lot of really cool research in that area as well, which is awesome. Colors create brands, right? So this is something that many of you are probably familiar with. So many brands are defined by the color that they've chosen and sort of what they put out in the world. And so I wanted to play a little game with you here, and you can please join us by doing this in the chat. And so I'm going to show you some different colorways, and I want you to tell me which brand that's associated with. Okay, are you ready? Here is number 1. So I want to see some responses in the chat. Don't be shy. Very good. I'll give you a clue. Are you still there? I don't know if that's the exact verbiage. Okay, so we had a lot of very sensible responses. We got Coca-Cola, Staples, Target. Yeah, so Aina got this. This very specific red, it might look different on your screen depending on how you're looking at this, is the Netflix red. And so what's interesting to sort of talk about is how do I know that this is Netflix red and it's not Coca-Cola red? All brands sort of develop this guideline book that tells you a specific 6-digit code on how to get this specific color. So I grabbed this from Netflix. So that's what this one is. Here's number 2. What do we think? There we go. We got this right away, right? So this really speaks to the idea of color speaks to brands, right? So many of you, all of you who guessed, got this sort of right away. And this is sort of Google's palette. Once again, pulled these very specific codes to get the exact Google colors, right? It wouldn't work if I chose sort of a blue by eye or whatever. And here's just one more. I'll give you a hint, it's not IKEA. This one's maybe a hard one. Good guess, David, but it's not Best Buy. There we go. Oh yeah, it's Ryerson blue and Ryerson gold. So hopefully some colors you get very comfortable with starting next year. Awesome. Okay, a couple last points here. Color is a science. So I have a little example for you here. So take a look at this example of Coca-Cola's products, right? They're on all sorts of different sort of materials. So you have the plastic of labels, you have sort of the cardboard cardstock of this holder over here, you have the metal bottle caps, you have these aluminum cans. So what does Coca-Cola have to do to make sure that this red is exactly the same across all their products, right? So that's where sort of the science behind it comes in. And part of what you'll get really good at GCM, you'll have a required color management course. So just to extend the crash course here, a lot of it happens with this, which is called a Pantone book. And it's sort of a universal way. So this is kind of a North American standard. Different continents have different ways that they standardize this. But sort of using this book, we figure out what Coca-Cola red is supposed to be. There's a way that we find this color in Illustrator when we're designing the packaging. And then our press operators would have this book on hand. They would have the printed product. And there's all sorts of tools and equipment that we have at GCM that let you measure this to make sure that it is what we're looking for. And it is that Coca-Cola brand red that we really want, right? So we're supposed to be 3 minutes to the end of our session here. So just in the interest of time so that we can take some questions, I'll just share this link with you right now. And we won't have the time to sort of do it. But in case you're interested in testing your color proficiency, Pantone, so that's the company that I mentioned that develops these books. They have a fun little color test here. And so what they've given you is sort of one hue to start. So there's this pinkish and one hue at the end, which is this yellow. And the idea here is just to test your color proficiency and see if you can get the very gradual hue transfer from one to the other. And then there's some fun facts along the bottom here. 1 in 255 women and 1 out of 12 men have some sort of color vision deficiency. So it's much more common for men to sort of have difficulty making the difference between colors than women do, which is quite interesting. And I clicked the link. All right. And then a couple quick projects related to color to show you. And so I mentioned that first year project right near the start where the students mix their own ink and they printed the poster and so on. In fourth year, we have a print production processes course, which really takes that to the maximum level and really gets you ready to be working in industry towards the end of your degree. And so what you're looking at here is basically the students choose the product that they want to sort of work on and develop all semester. And so this group here, they developed this really cute postcard map. So you can actually, on the other side of the postcards, fit them together to make this map. But basically, this very talented illustrator who's now graduated, Chris, he designed this very cool postcard. And then throughout the semester, the students prepared the files, they mixed the inks, they printed them, they cut them on our guillotine machine. Here you see Amy with what looks like a hair dryer, and what she's doing here is sort of sealing the plastic. So sort of seeing the whole cycle through, like how would they put this together to sell in a store. So really, really cool project that our grads do sort of to see the whole trajectory of a design and a product. All right. So thanks so much for making it all the way through this hour with us. I've had a lot of fun. So we're now going to open it to a Q&A. I know we're right around 5 now, so I'm actually just going to move one slide ahead and just sort of give you our, in case you need to reach out to us stuff. And then for anyone who is able to stay around, we're more than happy to take some questions. But yeah, thanks so much for being here today. If your method of contact that you prefer is email, you can contact us at gcmadmin@ryerson.ca. The website that I mentioned earlier, where you can really get a good sense of what GCM is all about, of course, is our ryerson.ca/GCM. And then we have a specially curated page of stuff just for applying to GCM, the requirements, and all that stuff that you can find at Future Students. And then we're on all social media at RUGCM. And once again, that's me on the other end. So feel free to say, hey, Jay, I was part of the session today. Just had a question about this or that. And yeah. All right. Question time. So feel free to turn off your mic if you want to speak your question in. Feel free to type it in the chat. And yeah, we're happy to take any questions you might have. I need to refill my water. Throat's dry.
We're in our first week of classes back after break, and everybody is losing their voice because we haven't been doing a lot of talking over the holidays. Anything at all about admissions, about what you might end up doing, not necessarily about the topics we covered today.
Yeah, in the meantime, like if anyone is taking a sec to type, I'll just mention a couple other things that I think are really cool about GCM. One is a paid internship. So a few years ago, we made it a requirement that if you want to hire our very qualified, very talented students as interns, that they deserve to be paid. You shouldn't be working for free. So we implemented that rule a number of years ago. And so that's a really nice way to sort of get really relevant knowledge and sort of offset the cost of university. So the company that I interned with when I was a student is now the largest magazine publisher in Canada. So I have an example here. So just to link back to the whole yearbook thing, I really loved sort of publishing and the idea of layout and all that stuff. So I was really happy to get an internship with this company. They came to our job fair, which we hold every year. If you haven't heard about that, there's a lot of cool videos of that on our website as well. So that's a really cool part of GCM. And the other thing I thought to mention is we have a really cool international exchange program. So that's something that you can do in third year. And so we have a lot of partners in Europe. So in Germany, in Sweden, in Belgium, what's the last? Copenhagen, in Denmark. And then recently we also got a new exchange partner in South Korea, which is so cool. So you can spend a semester there, sort of different way of life, sort of learning things at a different pace, which is really cool. And if you are interested in that, but worry about sort of committing to however many months that might take, a lot of our partners also do little intensives. And so I know our partner in Belgium, if you like packaging, for example, you can go there for just 2 weeks and finish this one course and you get a credit for it. They do it in 3D printing with us as well. FCAD, so at sort of the wider Ryerson level, has partners in Italy where you can do courses with them that count for credits. So there's a lot of really cool options in those avenues as well.
And there's also trips where you don't necessarily take courses, but you're just a part of a trip. So we try to attend trade shows all over the world and do different events. So we've been in the US. There's a big trade show that happens in Chicago as well as in Vegas, and that's somewhere we've been. And then we tend to go back again and again to Germany, where there's the world's largest print trade show, almost like the Olympics every 4 years, as well as a packaging one that happens also every 4 years, but every 2 years, the two. So we're almost always going somewhere. And that's usually a group of students, and it's a small group, like let's say 20 people, and they fundraise and they get ready for the trip, and they go, and it's usually like a 10-day experience, super fun.
And
Avoidant
the
even
legal
more.
drinking age in Germany is like 16, so it's a weird experience to go sort of drunk karaoke with your profs. Take this off the recording. But
And you get to
it's
drink
fun.
on the street, which is
Yeah,
so crazy.
there's little like takeout windows that'll serve you shots. It's nuts. When I was in fourth year, I was part of another extracurricular group at GCM, which is called Phoenix Challenge. And that's a group that focuses on flexographic printing. So that's printing on flexible substrates. So if we think back to the Coca-Cola example, like the labels that would go around the bottles, for example. And when I was in fourth year, the competition was taking place in San Diego, California. And this was in like April of fourth year. So it's like right near the end of my degree. And it was really funny to sort of go through customs, US customs, and they ask, what are you coming into the US for? And we're like, for a printing competition. And they're like, who are these nerds? They're not going to do anything. Let them through. But that was sort of a really nice way to wrap up our undergrad. Cool. So we're kind of over time now, and it looks like maybe nobody has any questions. So maybe to let you get back to your evening. Oh, sorry, Jacob, go ahead.
Yes, I have. Yeah, the university and the programs are pretty interesting. It was pretty worth to come on here and actually participate into learning of what you do at the university and what graphic design techniques you use. It's pretty intriguing.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for the good feedback. We're really glad you came out today.
Oh, I actually have a question
Hi,
too.
Samantha.
It's a little bit off topic, but it's about the admission requirements for Ontario students, if that's all right. So I applied, but I didn't take like any maths this year because it was too much and it's online. But I did take math in grade 11, so I just wanted to make sure like that's okay, right? Okay. Okay, cool.
To be very honest with you, Samantha, I'm also terrible at math, and I did take it in grade 12, so I relate.
Like
Here I am.
honestly, it's not that I'm horrible at math. It's
Yeah.
just math online is horrible. So I just didn't want to like put myself through that stress for my last year. So yeah.
I totally relate. But yeah, the short answer is your admission would not be affected by that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, Samantha. Anyone else?
Hello, I have a question.
Hi.
Speaking of online learning, how is online learning for this program? Since I can see like there's lots of hands-on activities and stuff. So I was wondering what it would look like for us in fall 2021.
Yeah, that's a great question, Melanie. I'll start, and then Nat, maybe you can fill in my gaps here.
Sure.
What I will say is we had quite a bit of foresight in terms of like the time that the university told us that we are going online to sort of plan what that looks like. And a lot of that is going down sort of this semester right now. And sort of the short of what I'll say is that our instructors work so hard to make sure that sort of the learning outcomes at the end of the day are the same. So you're not disadvantaged in any way by if the fall semester happens to be online. Like we've worked very hard to make sure that you get all the same learning at the end of the day. Just as a little example, I mentioned that course that I teach where we normally print stickers and stuff like that. And what I'll be doing is getting our students to submit their files, and then I'm going to go in the building myself and do a little live stream of me printing their stickers and sort of troubleshooting. So if there's issues with their file, I can sort of talk to them in this live stream and say, this is what we should do with this file to make sure it still works. So at the end of the day, I don't think it makes a huge difference in what you take away. And then I'm going to mail their stickers to them wherever you are around the world. It'll get to you. And then we're doing printing on the piece of equipment that I mentioned that you can print on wood and acrylic and things like that. This is the first semester where we can use that. So I'm going to get the students to design coasters that I'm going to print out and mail to them as well. So if you take a look on our Instagram, like so many instructors have prepared course packs this semester. So we have a really cool package prototyping course, and the instructor for that course, she got a sponsorship with Turtles chocolates, and they like shipped her all sorts of chocolates. She like designed a box and she like put them in the box and she sent this to every single student. So yeah, long-winded answer to say that I think we've been very creative about how we're delivering the lab stuff. Nat?
And without, so you covered it really well, Jay. I think without sort of like a crystal ball, right? Because nobody knows what's going to happen. We've been legislated out, so we don't know what the government will do. But I will say, in terms of being able to come back on campus, I imagine, and this is just me, Natalia, imagining that small groups will be allowed back sooner than large groups. And to that extent, I think GCM has a real advantage because we do have very small labs. So we have, as in small in terms of size of people. So because you guys are already separated into groups of 30, the real hope is that, you know, sooner rather than later, we'll be allowed to congregate in groups of 30, in which case there's a real potential. And what we're looking at is developing like a hybrid system. So basically, if you can't be in a lecture in a room together, that's not a huge deal. We could do that in this sort of environment, but our labs are small and our numbers are small. So we're hopeful that even if, you know, all these things that we've planned that are in place that are still keeping our courses really interactive, those are all great, but the hope is that we'll be able to go back as soon as the government gives us like a yes and it's safe to do so. And I will say that safety is like a really big sort of priority. And so we've been doing a lot of work to figure out our building and how you would move through our building. So unfortunately, I think COVID will be with us for some time. So just understanding that there's lots of planning happening to make it interactive as is right now. And I think it's been going really well, but also lots of planning to think about what it'll be like when you guys come back. And maybe that's in stages, maybe not, but we're sort of ready for any iteration. I will also say on a non-GCM related note, and I don't know if we have anyone on the call from admissions, but something that I've been thinking about is when you apply to university straight out of high school, you're a different kind of application than you are if you are applying after a gap year or some time. And one thing worth considering is if you're a student who's hoping for entrance scholarships, I would just read the fine print on waiting. If you're thinking, you know, I'm going to wait to apply, I wonder, I've been thinking about if that doesn't mess with your scholarship chances. So we're ready for you. I think, you know, first year is going to be amazing. We connect really well online or offline. But yeah, it's different. And we'll be happy when we're back in, but I think we're really well prepared.
Thanks, Melanie. Great question. Anyone else have anything before we wrap up today?
You guys, if we stay on 2 more minutes, it'll be 5:15. So just the find and 5, we're just gonna like, it'll be perfect ending to the situation.
Hi. If I were ever to go to RCM, what would the requirements be?
If you were to go where, sorry, Jacob?
To GCM, Ryerson.
Like entrance requirements, you mean?
Yeah.
So you need your university level English and a grade 11 U or M math. Marietta, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But those are the 2 required courses, and then your top best 6 grades. There's no portfolio requirement for our program. As you can see, there's tons of creativity that's happening within our program, but we're not teaching you to be creative. So it's much broader than that. Lots of people end up being entrepreneurs. They end up working in business, and so the focus is broader. So we don't do any. It's a grades only application.
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking because I was curious.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you.
Rasika had a question. What would one bring with them on the first day? That's a great question. So whether we're in person or online, like we always hold an orientation for first years the week before classes start. So this is really your like crash course and what your first week is going to look like. Like we'll make it very clear everything you need to have ready. So don't stress about that for sure. We'll make sure you know what you need to know.
Thanks so much for joining, you guys. We really appreciate you making the time. I think it's such a good move to find out about all the programs that you're applying to. It'll really make you feel comfortable when you arrive there.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.